Good evening. Today is Tuesday, April 22nd, and the time is 6:30 p.m. And I would like to call this regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Copeland,
Here.
Webb,
Here.
Stiegel,
Here.
Onken,
Here.
Caliphate,
Here.
Hauk,
Here.
Serrato.
Perfect. All right. We have a quorum. We can continue. Let's see, Mr. Lutz.
Yes, Madam Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Good evening. Real quick introduction tonight. We have seat one. Mr. Spencer Copeland is joining us. He is taking up an unexpired term, which expires on the 30th of this year. A little bit about his background. He has a degree from Sam Houston State University. Has been a pretty active member in the Kyle community. He serves on the City of Kyle Library Board, City of Kyle Economic Development, and then again, he was on the Sam Houston State University Alumni Board of Directors. His quote he shared with us was, "I have a passion for serving my community. The City of Kyle has a lot of opportunity in the immediate future with current growth trends, and we have an opportunity to strategically plan for that growth to the betterment of the community." And he'd like to offer his perspective and thoughts to the city. So welcome, Mr. Copeland. We're glad you could join us and glad to have you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. Welcome, Mr. Copeland. Item number 2, approval of minutes. Consider approval of the Planning and Zoning April 8th, 2025 regular meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning, April 8th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Serrato and a second from Commissioner Caliphate. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All opposed say nay. Okay, that motion passes. Minutes are approved. Item number 3, citizen comment period. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comments from citizens early in the agenda of regular meetings. Speakers are provided with an opportunity to speak during this time period on any agenda item or any other matter concerning city business, and they must observe the 3-minute time limit. So at this time, I will open citizen comments. Okay, seeing none, we will keep moving. All right, consent agenda. Consider approval of a proposed replat of lots 12 through 18, Block F. This is in Porter Country subdivision. Is there a motion on that item? Okay, I have a motion from myself to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion from Madam Chair Onken, second from Commissioner Serrato. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed, please say nay. All right, consent is approved. Okay, consider and possible action. Consider approval of a conditional use permit regarding building elevations for a retail center and gas station located at 1400 East FM 150 in the FM 150 East overlay, CUP 25-0125. Ms. Sharp.
All right. Good evening, Kayla Sharp, Senior Planner. So tonight we have a conditional use permit for you that is in the FM 150 East overlay. So just to kind of give you a reference point, this is on East FM 150, directly across from the Sunset Ridge subdivision, if that kind of gives you an idea of the area we're looking at. They are constructing a approximately 9,750 square foot retail store and gas station at 1400 East FM 150. And the building materials consist primarily of stucco and brick with appropriate architectural features. Here are the two sides of the building. The kind of grayish color on the top northwest elevation is all brick. The brown and kind of tan neutral color is all stucco. And then on that southeast elevation, it's primarily stucco. And then the top is the rear elevation, and then the bottom is the front facade. Decent amount of brick on that front facade as well as stucco. And they have some awnings and things like that to accent the design. And then here is a 3D rendering. Also, I'll point it out on the next slide as well, but just wanted to note that there will be brick wrapping on the columns for the gas canopy. So kind of hard to see, so shows up better in that 3D image, but there is the masonry. Here is the site plan. I know it's a little hard to read, but this is compliant with the Chapter 53 zoning code and the FM 150 East overlay. Here we have landscape plan. In the next slide, I'll show a little bit more detail on the front landscaping. There is an easement on the front that kind of limits what landscaping they're able to plant at the front property line. So they have modified that a little bit to account for that easement. So you can see in a little bit more detail here, it's more shrubs and things like that than trees because of how the roots grow and things like that. Don't want to interfere with the gas pipeline that's there. And then photometric sheet, also compliant with Chapter 53. And then just as a reminder, these are your standards for review: height, building mass, architectural details, roof, building materials, compatibility of design and materials, landscape plan, vehicular and pedestrian access, signage, exterior lighting. So that has all been kind of shown for your reference with this plan. If you're familiar with the I-35 overlay, just as a reminder, this one does not have the same masonry requirements as the I-35 overlay that you're used to seeing. So from a staff point, we're pretty limited on what we can require and enforce, but it is within your purview to ask for modifications if you so choose. And then just as kind of a refresher, this particular development began the development process back in 2020 with the intent to construct a gas station prior to Ordinance 1196 being adopted in May of 2022. That's the ordinance that kind of restricts where new gas stations can be located in relation to existing. So if you're thinking, how are they allowed to have a gas station here? They're vested as they started the process prior to that ordinance being adopted. Other than that, staff has found this request to be compliant with the FM 150 East overlay and also Chapter 53 zoning, and we are recommending approval. So your options tonight are to approve with modifications, or deny. And again, we are recommending approval. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yes, one.
Okay.
You mentioned that they had started the development process before that ordinance passed.
Mm-hmm.
What does started the development process mean? Did they submit an application or call you and say, hey, we're talking about this? What does that mean?
I would have to double check specifically which application, but it either started with zoning or plating, one of the two. Honestly, they were probably fairly simultaneous, but that kind of triggered the start of the development process.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff?
Yes, this is Neil Steele speaking, and it was said in the memo that 9,750 square feet of retail store and gas station would be located there. And I was hoping, for one thing, that somehow this did fall under Ordinance 1196, and it doesn't, the question proves that. But I was hoping, my dream would be that the 9,750 square feet would somehow be a food store, more of a small grocery. And I see it's split up into a convenience store and then just a retail space, non-specified. Is that going to carry through? Is it going to be just a convenience store then, best we know?
So to the best of our knowledge at this point, they will have a convenience store component, and then the rest of it will be retail. This is zoned retail services, so any other use allowed in retail services would be able to take up the rest of the space in that building.
So my concern about the issues about the gas and the food store would be these, that the east side probably, it might need another gas station, but more than that, it needs a food outlet. And I think it is short-sighted perhaps of the developers, in my opinion, to develop this with this routine kind of convenience store without giving thought to the possibility of serving the surrounding community better with a grocery outlet. So if that might be conveyed to them on my behalf, please.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for staff? We would need a motion and a second to take action on this.
I make a motion to consider approval of conditional use permit for the retail center and gas station located at 1400 East FM 150.
I will second.
Okay. We have a motion from Commissioner Serrato and a second from Commissioner Caliphate to approve the conditional use permit for the retail center and gas station located at 1400 East FM 150. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, actually, is it possible to, like, if we ask them to maybe consider putting in a, like Commissioner Stiegel said, putting in a food outlet in this thing, would they be open to that kind of discussion?
We can convey that message back to them, but at this point, this was straight zoning, so any use allowed in the retail services zoning would be permitted
Okay.
in this building. So we're happy to share that message with them, but ultimately, it's up to them how they want to sell the spaces or lease them out, however. they
Heard
see
that.
fit.
This is Stiegel again. When the two-step project came up, there was concern at the council particularly that the retail space was going to be dedicated to a food outlet, a food retail, be a certain size, and there was some wrangling over that. And it was evident that the person who was going to step up to be the vendor had the capacity to do 9,000 or 10,000 square feet routinely, it would seem, according to my memory. And I would encourage the developer to cast about to look for a qualified vendor to bring into that space to provide the food service, to provide food retail.
Yes, Commissioner Stiegel, I think that was considered as part of a development agreement and also a PUD, a particular zoning associated with that. But you're right, council, at the council meeting, there was a vendor that was potentially interested. So maybe that's something that we could connect this user with to see if they would be interested in this location.
Yes, thank you. I think that I understand that the other project was a PUD and so forth. But when it comes to this side of I-35 that we're speaking about, the east side, we have to look at providing all the best services we can and encourage developers, though they're before us just for architectural design, so forth, meeting code standards, to really give consideration to what the community is needing, rather than just doing a cookie cutter design and propping it up with the usual convenience store services and gas. So obviously that's strong in my opinion, and I do hope it's conveyed to them.
Yes, sir. We will pass that information along. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. So the motion on the table is to approve the conditional use permit for the retail center and gas station. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Receive a staff report and hold a discussion regarding the following items. Update regarding the Texas Chapter American Planning Conference, Development Code Rewrite Update, and P&Z Commissioner Training. Mr. Lutz.
So the Texas APA Conference, that registration is now open. That's going to be in College Station from October 22nd through the 24th. So please, if you're interested in attending, reserve that on your calendar. Expect an email from Kayla with the information on registration, dates, bookings, itinerary, all of that. If you didn't go to Denver, we had recently, it's a chance to kind of see more focused on kind of Texas issues. So this is a good one to attend if you're available. Code rewrite. So as you know, we're kicking off a complete code overhaul of our zoning code. But it's not just zoning, we're also looking at standard specifications, engineering, public works. So this is a pretty substantial rewrite for the city moving forward. We held a kickoff meeting on April 10th. They are now in the diagnostic phase, so they'll be reviewing all of our codes, existing ordinances, and kind of looking at, kind of next steps and how they're going to move forward. So more information coming up. When we start public outreach, we'll start talking workshops, both just for P&Z, joint council and P&Z, and then as much, public outreach as we can do. So as soon as we get those timelines, we'll start sharing those with y'all so that y'all are available in case you want to attend. And then finally, this is going to be commission member training. So this is something we've been talking about doing for a while. We've got several new members tonight. Some of y'all have been on the dais. Y'all are seasoned vets, so but we did want to put this on. So we're going to kind of hold some training over several meetings. We'll break it down kind of the following topics. So we'll be discussing commission overview, powers, purview, role, slightly kind of touch on Opens Meetings Act, but most of the new members have gone through that training fairly recently. But then we do want to talk land use, zoning versus comp plan, plating, variances, CUPs, other duties. But today we are just going to be going over the commission overview, powers, and purview. So what is Planning and Zoning Commission? So largely it's an advisory group to the governing body, in this case City Council, on issues related to planning, plating, land use regulation, and overall community development. There are limited decision-making powers, but you do wield a credible amount of influence through your recommendations. So again, it's not just approve or deny, you can approve with modifications, conditions. That you are responsible for keeping planning and land use related issues in perspective for the community. So again, you do have a tough job when you're looking at the entire community as a whole. What are your goals as a commission? Ultimately, your goals are to enforce the city's goals found in our city's charter, zoning regulations, comp plan, and other master plans, help improve quality of life for those who live, work, and visit the community. Your goals are to help create order and predictability, ensure safety of citizens and their property from non-compatible uses or development patterns, promote efficient use of resources, whether that's water, sewer, some other resource for the community, parkland, things of that nature, and then identify alternatives and procedures for development activities. So either that's modifications to recommended PUDs or processes that you'd like to streamline or work with staff. Again, the ultimate goal is promote community health and future viability. So what are some characteristics of an ideal P&Z commission? Again, this is a little bit for me on what an ideal commission is, but I look at diverse backgrounds in education. This is a community that covers all walks of life, so the more differences we can have on a community, I think the more perspectives you get, and it helps the entire community as a whole if all of the groups are looked at. You're balanced across areas of expertise. Maybe someone is a real estate agent, maybe someone's a developer, maybe someone's just a citizen. How do we balance the uses? Understanding and appreciating the community is a big one. It's not just a place you live. This is your home. Some of us, you may work here, you may not, but ultimately this may be where you spend the rest of your life. It may just be a stopover, but appreciating where you live is a big one. Understand and committed to the public process. So this is P&Z is very public process. We have a lot of public hearings. We reach out to the citizens. Again, our goals are to meet their needs as far as how the future is developing and growing. Maintain objectivity, committed to planning, and then ultimately balancing competing community interests. So you do have different interest groups, different factors, so different opinions on different developments, on what's best. So again, that's what you have to do is balance those interests. What benefits do the commission provide to the community? We've touched on a little bit, but ultimately you shape the future. You help identify local issues. You identify public values. You help tie programs and master plans together. You promote public involvement, either through your activism and volunteering for this board. You can spread the word and get others to join. We have many board members, many boards across the city. So you attract appropriate development. We have a lot of discussion on the type of development, where it goes, what it should be. You increase certainty, protect natural resources, improve public services and efficiency, minimize land use conflicts, and then promote good development design standards, especially through code modification and rewrites. So what does it take to be an effective commissioner? Knowledge of your role, your commission's authorities and duties is probably primarily the big one. How the Planning Commission operates, standard for commission decision-making. So what are the laws, what are the ordinances, what do the master plans say? Legal aspects of commission conduct, so how you interact with, say, a developer that may be reaching out to you on a future case. And then comprehensive and other types of planning, zoning, platting, and land use regulations. So obviously, some of you may know some of these things. Some of you may come in and not have any background at all, and that's what staff is here for. Please lean on us if you have questions. If you want to sit and chat and just kind of understand something, we're always available for you guys. So what is your ultimate authority? So the Texas Local Government Code is a state statute. It provides what authority commissions may have, and then what additional authority cities and councils can assign to its P&Z and commissions. So your local charters and ordinances also define that authority further. So if you go through planning and zoning, it outlines what's the commission's role, what do you do, is there an appeal? There's all of that is outlined for y'all. Now, duties do vary across community. In one community, you may review plats and make recommendations, and then they go on to council, and council has ultimate authority. In other communities, such as here, you guys are ultimately the final authority on plats, unless it's something unique that's Plum Creek related or some odd code that goes on. But ultimately, y'all are the platting authority. General duties and purview, prepare a comprehensive plan, act as the platting authority for the city, review and recommend land use regulations and amendments in accordance with the city's adopted comp plan. That can also include PUDs, planned unit developments. You can recommend implementation, amendments, or adoption of comprehensive plans and the zoning code, and then review and make recommendations on requested property and rezones. So as y'all know, we've had several rezonings. I don't know that we've ever had one that y'all have requested approved as presented. I think there's usually some modifications that this board will come up with, and they've all been great additions to the projects we've been working on. What types of decisions can the P&Z commissions make? So there's basically a couple types. You've got legislative decisions. Those are makes or interprets policy or code. It's broad ranging and affects everyone in general. Yet no one in particular, and then you have make sure that there's a substantive due process, so reasonableness of decisions applies. So a zoning code, zoning change request, you guys are looking at that. Is it in line with the comp plan? If you're getting a request for a variance, what is the policy that they're requesting the variance from? What are the issues? Why can't they make it? Are there negative aspects? If you grant it, you have to consider all of those things. Then you have quasi-judicial decisions. Those have a direct effects on rights and liabilities of a single person or a small group. Their procedural due process, so kind of fairness. So an example of that would be in my role as planning director, if I'm meeting with an applicant and they want to do something and I point to a section of code and I say, well, it says this. If they don't like my interpretation or they don't agree with that, they can't appeal that decision to you guys to look at getting some clearance on what that decision, whether you guys agree with me or not. So that's a kind of quasi-judicial decisions that y'all can make in that aspect. So how does the commission operate and what its role within the city? It is or should be a panel with knowledge of community character, again, local regulations. You are an advisory role. You do provide those recommendations to council. You are a regulatory role. Again, we talked about that. You're administering local land use, zoning, site development, comp plans, CUPs, architectural, all of those things you have a lot of control over, from material types to plant species to driveway locations. And then your procedural role, which is what we're doing tonight, conduct fair meetings and make fair decisions. What is your commission with elected officials? Sorry, what is your relationship with connected officials? The most important aspect is the planning commission and the governing body or city council. Again, you're an advisory role. You do have some purview on some decision making, but ultimately that's your role to city council. Council does have the authority to either approve your recommendations, deny them, or change those recommendations. So I think there's been a couple of times where y'all have made recommendations. Maybe not all of them have gotten adopted by council. So there's some flexibility there. You should have a good working relationship with council. You play a key role in keeping council informed. A lot of times, if you're seeing issues over and over again, it might be something that needs to be pushed up. Say, hey, we may have a problem here. Let's take a longer look at this. And then what is your relationship with the planning staff? So we play a pretty critical role in the planning process. Basically our role is trying to explain land uses, be a resource for you on what the codes say. Sometimes we can provide historical background on projects. Sometimes we're unable to do that, but we do like to give you everything, the information you need, and not just data, raw data, but some context to how that development fits into the greater area. Prepare reports, post meeting notices. These are the things that we do to help y'all. Research planning, land use issues. We advise the commission. Again, we make recommendations all the time. Whether you agree with us or not does not hurt our feelings. We're just here to give you guys a hand. We educate the public, assist the public. We know and interpret laws and ordinances. Again, conduct community projects, capital. We negotiate quite a bit. So with developers, when we're talking development agreements, PUDs, land uses, that's a big part of our kind of behind the scenes task that y'all don't see a lot of. And then enforcing all of our codes on conditions of approval. Again, providing continuity is what we try to do with all of our developments. What's the commission's relationship with the public? So public involvement is the most important aspect of planning and zoning. It's an opportunity to not only educate and build support, but encourage the citizen to take control and ownership of their city. Again, so you know someone and they're like, well, we really enjoy that you're on P&Z. I'd like to help. And then you can say, well, there's no role here, but there's boards of adjustment. We have parks, we have trains. So, help us get the word out. But ultimately, it helps improve trust in government when we have local communities and involvement. It's not just someone in a back room making a deal. It's very public. Most people can watch all of our public hearings, understand our discussion, how we got to decision points. Helps create a sense of ownership in plan regulations, creates constituency and planning. Again, ensure plans remain intact over time. Sometimes we talk about this quite a bit. We have plans that were started 15, 20 years ago. How do we make sure that vision then is evolving with current vision and plans? And then improve enforcement of land use laws, streamline planning processes, and development. So some practical advice I'd like to share with some of the new commissioners is please read your packets before the meeting. If you have questions, as good as our staff is, we've got some great folks, Debbie, Kayla. We don't know everything that you might ask, so we may want to do some research, but we always want to have answers for y'all. We don't want to have to come back and say, I'm not sure, so if you have questions, you're reading it ahead of time, that really helps us help you. Seek our assistance out before the meeting, either regarding regulations, goals, situations, overall thoughts. We'll be glad to sit and chat with you on developments. Know your comprehensive plan and your zoning and plotting codes. So we will always try to share with you what those are if you have questions. Part of our further trainings, we'll actually probably get into some of the code sections and do some discussion on some points that may have caused some confusion for this group recently. So we'll kind of talk on that at later trainings. Be familiar with sites and projects. Sometimes you look at an aerial photo, you think you totally understand what's going on, and then you drive by and there's just something about being there in person that's a little different. But if you know the community and you are around, just be aware of what's out there in the community. Share information. If there's something you find out, you want to share that with staff that you think is important. And then focus on facts. What are the facts of the case? Try not to focus too much on personal opinions. And summarize, what you've heard as you're making your determinations. Participate in discussion, be practical, impartial, fair, and follow the code. I think y'all have all done a good job from my time here. Be a problem solver. We're not always looking to make problems. Most new development has its own issues that we work through, so we definitely don't want to create more work for ourselves as we go through the process. Be probing, ask questions. If you have some concerns, you want to know the background or how they got to that decision, that's great. We just try not to be argumentative. That's something you kind of have to balance with folks. Zoning, people get very passionate about their property. I mean, we are in Texas, so property rights are very, very high value for citizens. Respect your associates and treat everyone equally. Again, while discussions, debate, conversations are encouraged, again, remain civil. We work together. We're all on the same team, even though we have differences of opinions. And that's not just for this board or staff. That's also with the public, with council, with other boards and commissions. So how does the Planning Commission make decisions? First one is use a little bit of common sense. Sometimes things are not always black and white, and you've got kind of debating sections of code. You can just kind of fall back to common sense thought process. But think about what is in the best interest of the community at large. What is the big picture, not just for now, but 10 years down the road. Always consider the rules, regulations, but ultimately the vision of the community. That's what we're always looking at, is 10 years out, 5 years out. So that's probably the number one thing we do when we deal with developers. Today we want to do today, and we're always looking at, what about tomorrow? Consider facts, testimony, and the code, and then interpret the comprehensive plan and zoning coordinates in accordance with legal requirements. Those are probably some of the best recommendations I can give to new members. And then the most important thing is probably just make findings as y'all are discussing. They're a statement of evidence, reasons that are used. I think most of you are pretty good when we talk about wanting to make an amendment or add on. We discuss why we're doing that. So those are important for us, especially to add to the minutes in case someone went back and was like, how did they get to that decision? Findings need to be supported by facts. They are a roadmap. They detail, again, your thought process, what you were considering, what were the issues, what were the concerns, either from staff, the public, or the developer. And then, typically include a description, statement of facts, reasons for your approval or denial in those conditions of approval, especially if it's some type of variance or waiver request. You kind of want to put those in there. Staff will sometimes do that in the staff report. We'll outline why we're supporting it or why we're not. If you don't want to restate it, you can always just, as the findings, outlined by staff report or something like that. And then, do I have the same slide twice? I do. Any questions? I know that was a lot, so.
Yeah, I think we just wanted to give this the opportunity to really kind of engage with you on this training, knowing that some of us are newer than others, but I think it's always a good kind of run through. Thank you, Jason, for that. I did want to say we kind of introduced at the top of the agenda really the code kickoff that staff has done. I did want to let you know that they will be seeking out you as the Planning and Zoning Commission for feedback on this code rewrite too. We're trying to get with them on kind of maybe hitting one of our meetings and working that into kind of some discussions. And then, as you know, staff did talk to you about our May meeting date. And I think Commissioner Copeland, I don't know if we talked to you about that, but we're looking at having one meeting in May, and I think it's May 20th. So mark that date down on your calendar, which is honestly a little bit different from our normal commission meetings, but we did a switcheroo with council. So if there's any public notices or anything else we need to notify for that, we'll definitely be shooting for that May 20th date. But yeah, any questions you have, you want to play stump the planner now that you got Jason standing up there, you know?
It's my favorite game.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, no question, but just I think it's a good opportunity with the code updates that we can solicit feedback from other boards and commissions and find out where there could be friction or other equities that maybe we need to weigh properly that we don't have visibility on. So I know some of those impact other boards and their day-to-day operations, and just make sure we take this chance to do it well and have that full range of feedback.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that would be a good idea to facilitate some connection between our commission and the other boards and commissions to make sure that as we're considering those changes, that the various perspectives are getting heard and represented.
Definitely.
Oh, I love that idea. Piggybacking off of that, like, for example, we will be looking at the parkland dedication ordinance, for example. So as you know, we have a separate parks board for that. We'll definitely be engaging with them more specifically on that topic. But if you'd like to be invited and come to that, we'll make sure that we kind of give you a heads up on some of those discussions as well. And then you're right. So for example, we have a board of adjustment that looks at variances to different codes and sections. So we as staff, as we see those come along, you know, maybe that's something that we should maybe take a little bit of a better eagle eye on if we have similar variances that are going through. Often, you know, with an entire code rewrite, we really are looking at, honestly, the entire code, but those are always opportunities for us to kind of engage with that. And then as Jason was talking about, we're definitely looking at our engineering criterion and manuals and different things as well. So that's pretty heavy on the staff side of really kind of looking at our construction standards and stuff on that as well. And it's exciting.
It is exciting. I'm excited. Yay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? I just want to quickly reiterate that this team here is wonderful, and they're a great resource for us. So if you ever have questions while you're preparing for a meeting, please reach out to them, email, text, let them know your questions in advance of the meeting so that they have time to look into it, understand it, get you an answer back. And it's been a great resource for me, and I appreciate the insight that they share. So that would be one thing. And then the second thing would be when you do make a vote here and you're voting against something, please be pretty clear about why you're voting no, because I know that city council, the mayor, they watch these meetings and they listen to what we say. They value the inputs that we have. So if you can clearly explain why you're voting the way that you're voting, that will help them to then affirm your vote or to reach out, ask for more information as to why you voted the way that you did. But yeah, if you're going to vote against a motion, please give some sort of explanation as to why you're doing that before we move forward with it. So those are my two comments. Thank you, Mr. Lutz.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we are at our last item, which is adjournment. We've discussed everything that was on tonight's agenda, so there's nothing further, no further business that we may discuss at this time. And we are going to be adjourned at 7:08.